Lidia, tell us about you and your career. How did you start and how did you end up at Pfizer?
Sure. So thank you, everybody. Good morning. I grew up in Southern California. You could say the classical immigrant story. My family came to the U.S. in the hopes of a better future and the promise of America. I can tell you initially, I had my sights on being a lawyer. I even selected the university and my major in line with that aspiration. But it was my first job right after college that gave me an opportunity to think about data and digital and technology as a career path. You see, I was working at Sony, and my boss at the time, who's one of my mentors, he was the head of business affairs and legal affairs. So I thought, perfect. I graduated college. I'm going to work under, an attorney. I'm going to then go back to law, go back to law school, or go to law school after this. But then he gave me an assignment, to go work with the IT team because they were having a major need. And so I went, and that was a pivotal moment because it was, I figured out what we needed to address. And it became clear to me that I'm a solutions person and that data, it was the beginnings of me really thinking about data and the power of knowing and how when you can connect those dots and have the data, you can actually make more informed and better decisions. And that shifted my trajectory. And so instead of going to law school, I then applied to business school. And at the time, I found one of the few schools that had a dual degree. Again, remember, I had the data bug, right? So I actually ended up in the Netherlands in the Rotterdam School of Management, where they offered a dual degree of the Master's in Business Administration, so the MBA, but also a Master's in Business Informatics. At that time, even MIT didn't offer that just yet. So after that, I joined Philips Healthcare after graduate school. And that began my career in healthcare more than 20 years ago. And I can tell you, it has been my passion to apply digital data and technology to improve health outcomes. And so that was a big driver for joining Pfizer, the tremendous impact we have on the health of patients. And the second reason that I joined Pfizer was that Albert Bourla, who became CEO in January of 2019, was looking for someone to lead the company on a digital transformation journey that would impact every aspect of our business. So I couldn't resist. So in January of 2019, I joined Albert and the Pfizer team. And as you can see, it's been a phenomenal journey. And, being able to bring a COVID vaccine in record time is just a phenomenal expression of what the power of healthcare can do, to change and impact people's lives.
Well, I think we all agree, and we, as a non-Pfizer employee, applaud you all from a distance. It's incredible what you've done. I also think it's interesting. First of all, I cannot tell you how many interviews I do where someone starts and says, I was going to be a lawyer. It is like a very common path, but I think it's so interesting how the data sort of sang for you. And it helped you find your path, and then find your path not just to data, but to really public service or kind of greater good through the data work you were doing. Really, really incredible and interesting to see how you went through that. At Pfizer, you've certainly grown through the role. What kind of career opportunities have you benefited from, and how did they impact your trajectory?
Sure. So, like I said, right, I joined a little bit over 2 years ago, and I serve as the Chief Digital and Technology Officer, and I'm a member of Pfizer's executive leadership team. The mission that we're on is we're driving a digital transformation journey that is enhancing every aspect of our business, from, speeding up the discovery and development of medicines and vaccines, improving health outcomes by enhancing the experiences of patients and healthcare providers. Also making our work faster and easier through technology, right? So that we can get those medicines and vaccines to patients as quickly as we can. My team is embedded in every division of the company, And we partner, we act as thought partners and co-create solutions with our science, our clinical development teams, our manufacturing teams, our commercial teams. And so that's, part of what I do. Now, last August, Albert asked me to take on 2 additional responsibilities. One is what we call business process excellence. And what we're doing in this new function that I've actually been growing over the past, 8-9 months is to drive new ways of working. I think all of us have learned that we can do, things at scale, maybe once thought not imaginable. And I think that the COVID pandemic kind of taught us all to kind of think about new ways of working. And so that's one of the additional responsibilities is simplifying processes across the company across all of our different areas to help us be faster, leaner, accelerate innovation, and also very importantly, respond faster to customer needs. The other responsibility that I took on is I'm now leading learning and development for Pfizer. And we're literally redefining the future of learning. And this includes creating, comprehensive, engaging, and personal learning and development experiences for all of our colleagues. And, what I will tell you with that is, there's learning that you do that's in the course of your work, so related to your role. But we're also introducing learning that you can do that also supports your growth and development aspirations. And so we're not just thinking about providing learning so that you can be the best that you can be at your current job, but we're also thinking, how do we continuously develop and grow as colleagues for the next role, maybe to expand to a different area so that we can get more a variety of experiences. And then, of course, there's leadership development that has a major focus for us. So if you can see, having been here, 2 years, I feel fortunate, that I've had not only the opportunity of what I call my day job, which doesn't feel like a job to me, but also, I have this tremendous opportunity to lead and help our company through this transformation that we're on.
Amazing. And I think it is so admirable to see the company place such an important focus on learning and development and also place it within a business function, which is really unusual. I think that shows a real commitment to the learning. We spend a lot of time talking to technologists, and honestly, one of the main reasons they tend to choose a job is because it's cool. Like the work is really cool. What's cool about the work that you're doing?
So I could definitely add my name to that list of cool. I'm a movie kind of buff. And, if you remember in the first Batman, right, with Jack Nicholson, and Jack Nicholson was the Joker. And if, there was a scene where, Batman flies in, with some of his gadgets, right? Batman always had these cool gadgets. And then the Joker says, where does he get all these wonderful toys, And I feel like my job is I get to not only play and come up with those wonderful toys. So there's definitely a cool aspect to what I do. I think, I'm most interested in harnessing the power of digital data and technology, not for the gadgets themselves, but for the impact that they can have to improving health and improving patients' lives, right? In any solution that we create, I always encourage our teams to lead with the customer. What experience are we trying to create? What is it that that patient or that doctor is experiencing? And let's make sure that we're thinking about it from that point of view. And that requires horizontal thinking, aligning ourselves, to what that patient is experiencing, as opposed to our own internal processes, which tend to be vertical. The patient's experience is not vertical, right? It happens over time, so it's more horizontal in nature. And I think when we start with the customer, then we really unleash our creativity, and we can actually create industry-leading solutions with unique and personalized experiences that, deliver the outcomes. Because at the end of the day, it's not just about the technology. The technology is a means to creating an experience that really helps somebody, but then also it improves the outcomes. So also the results are an important piece of it. And, I think Pfizer is a great place to have a digital career because we're absolutely leveraging cutting edge digital, whether it's artificial intelligence, machine learning, IoT, to, some of the, the most innovative ways to do customer experience and digital experience in all of our properties, right? So, and again, with the ultimate goal of aligning to our purpose. And our purpose is to deliver breakthroughs that change patients' lives. That's what I find, really interesting about what I do.
It sounds amazing. And I also cannot imagine how exciting it has been in the last 12 months to have a front row seat to this sort of like moonshot, get the vaccine out in a year experience, and that you did it. I mean, it must feel like such an accomplishment. What do you feel like has been what has been the biggest challenge in your career so far? And what did you learn from it?
So, when I am invited to join a company, there's usually transformation work. I would say I've built a career in addition to just the harnessing digital, to power and empower healthcare. Usually when I'm invited to join is that there's a transformation, and I consider myself a change agent by nature. So, I found that in any company where I'm leading a transformation, the greatest challenge is bringing people along the journey. Resistance to change, I find, and I've learned over the years, is a natural part of that process. It can be difficult. Yeah. It can be uncomfortable for people to adapt to new ways of doing things. And what I've learned is the best way to get people to come on the journey is to share, start with sharing the vision for the future. And what does that future look like? Why do we need to change? And I think also very importantly, tie it to how it will benefit the company, how it will benefit the customer, and how it will benefit each of us. So I have found that most people have the capacity for change if you keep them engaged throughout the process, get their feedback, and also provide support along the way. Because it is, a new way of doing things. And in a true transformation, that's the other thing. It takes a few years. So it's important to share success stories, celebrate incremental wins along the way. And then as people start to see the tangible outcomes, they often become the biggest promoters of this new way of working. Yeah. That's what I have found, to be the biggest challenge, as we take on transformative work.
You have to sell it in.
Yes, ma'am.
So we talked a little at the beginning, I don't know if you heard, about how Fairy Godboss came to be. And part of what my co-founder had in mind when we developed Fairy Godboss was giving women the ability to understand whether they could have any work-life balance working in different companies. How have you, well, I don't want to say achieved work-life balance, but how have you sought out work-life balance throughout your very successful career?
So, I think it's really, really important because what I find is striking that balance is really, really important because, all of us, we spend about a third of our lives at work. That means there's 2/3 of our lives that are not at work. And so it's important, to kind of keep that.
Sleep, right?
Yes, so if you think about that, right? So work-life balance, making sure that I balance my passion for, my career, but with my personal interests and time with the family. I have a husband, we've been together for more than 25 years, and I have twin sons who are 16 years old.
Wow.
And, and I do engage with them. And in fact, what I've done with them is they are a great source because they're digital natives. I will run my ideas to, with them and say, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? So definitely incorporate, some of that. I would say in the past year, I have found it very helpful to reserve a block of focus time each day. So, and that's where I can really think about strategy, connecting dots about what's next. And that focus time that I have baked into my day, and I literally do this every day, it has been a really important to be generative and to, just really give me an opportunity to feel like I also have the time to think about the big ideas. And this is the time where I find that I can be the most proactive, the most creative. And sometimes I also use part of that block to just go get some fresh air and take a walk.
Yeah.
This routine has been a game changer for me. And I can tell you, I'm encouraging my team to do the same. That focus time and giving ourselves permission, to have that, it's, to me, is a very important part of that work-life balance.
Yes, I often quote, there's a researcher from Stanford named Greg McEwen who has found that we are more productive and innovative when we take walks. I agree. So I think, what is your favorite way to practice self-care? Is that the walks? Are there other ways?
Oh yeah, the walks are part of it for sure. And I take probably about one walk is with my husband only. And then the second walk is also with the boys as well. We also play a lot of basketball. My sons are on the basketball team, and we live in Chapel Hill, so this is like epicenter,
Yeah.
So we play some mean basketball that definitely helps in the walks. I also, two other things. I also like to get up early and have a little bit of time to myself, and that's a quiet time. I relax. I have time to have a chai tea latte with my husband before the day starts. And then I mentioned already focus time, which for me personally, my focus time comes in the middle of the day. For some people, it's at the beginning of the day. For others, it works better towards the end of the day. For me, it's in the middle of the day. So those are the different self-care kind of roles that I engage in.
Really important for everyone to discover when their focus time is and know and plan their schedule around it. Mine, by the way, is definitely first thing in the morning. It's like fueled by coffee. But somebody here actually from the audience is asking a question, which is they want to know more about specifically, what do you do in your focus time? How do you make use of it? Or how do you direct it?
Sure. So, for example, I use my focus time because so part of it could be if we have a major program that we are, designing or working on. So I'll give you what my focus time this week, that will give you a little bit of a flavor. So this week, we're actually refreshing the Pfizer digital strategy. The last time, we refined our strategy was when I first joined 2 years ago. So right now, my leadership team and I are going through the process of refreshing that strategy. So I will use my focus time to actually, take a look at, okay, what should be our priorities, right? So we learned a lot from COVID. I think we can all agree that COVID accelerated, digital fluency and digital adoption probably by 5 years.
Yeah.
And so then I use my focus time to think about, okay, where do we go from here? What are going to be the priorities? And I literally will use a whiteboard and say, okay, priorities, and so that I have my own point of view. And then when I, sit together then with my leadership team to review that, I've actually have thought about that and thought about, okay, what are the priorities that might make the most sense? I sometimes will use my focus time, and I do this as well. I'm always, right now, a lot of us are working virtually. So it's really important for us to, check on the well-being of our colleagues, right? So the other thing that I'll do during my focus time is I see how my team is doing. And, I will just kind of, nudge and say, hey, how's it going? I might use it also to do a virtual coffee chat where we don't have to talk about, business. We can just catch up and see, how they're doing. So I'll use my focus time for that. The other thing that I like to use my focus time for is particularly some of the, new ideas. Like right now, we're exploring a new idea. So I use my focus time to actually, do brainstorming. And like I said, I have a whiteboard that I will just plop ideas on there and just kind of work them through. And so that's a typical use of, focus time. It's really to think about what's next, to connect dots. It's about, okay, is there something we haven't thought about? And then also, importantly, checking on our colleagues, because that's also really important to ensure that the organization and my leaders and, the people that are in my organization are doing well. This is a different time, right? We're dealing in a pandemic where People are working virtually. They probably have kids that are doing remote learning. That adds, just a different set of, needs. And so that's the typical stuff that I do.
I love it. I love that you incorporate this checking in on your colleagues. I also, I should have just known that the focus time would involve a whiteboard. Of course.
Yeah.
How do you incorporate Pfizer culture into your everyday work, and how does it impact your team?
Sure. Pfizer's culture is defined by 4 values. So we have 4 values, which are courage, excellence, equity, and joy. And all of us, and I certainly personally do my best to live, these values every day, and encourage my leadership team and all of my organization to do the same. So on the courage, it's about thinking big. It's about speaking up, and be thought partners to drive innovation, right? So the courage to us is defined with those behaviors. On the excellence front, it's about focus on what matters most. And the COVID vaccine is a great example of that, right? We have this overarching goal: focus on what matters most, measure outcomes, instead of activity is part of that. And ensure that we're driving our purpose, right? Equity is actually, out of all the values, my favorite one, because as a company, it's about being inclusive, right? It's about, our value of equity is that we really commit and believe that every colleague deserves to be heard, deserves to be seen, and deserves to be cared for. And so that drives, that inclusive perspective, and ensuring that we have diverse backgrounds. We find that it yields better results and creates a stronger sense of community and belonging. And then joy, not to be underestimated, right? Spreading joy, recognizing the team for their hard work and dedication is really, really important. So what we like to say is that, having fun, it's also important, and learning what fun means to others. And we like to say that, we take our job seriously and our work seriously, but, not ourselves too seriously, right? So the joy aspect is also an important part of our culture.
I love it. And it's so wonderful to hear how equity really serves as the backbone of your work environment. And I love that you incorporate joy. That's something I talk about a lot, which is that if we can't, because it's 1/3 of where we spend 1/3 of work, and also because now we work in our homes, we have to find joy in our work, or we won't find fulfillment in it. Let's dive a little bit more into this idea of equity. What are some of the main things Pfizer does to support women and historically underrepresented minorities?
Sure. So, we have actually made some, and I'm very proud of Pfizer. We have set some, concrete goals, right? And we've actually shared those also externally, of course, internally, but also externally. And some of those goals include opportunity parity goals, right, for both in the U.S., right? It's certainly U.S. Minorities and women. Globally, we have set goals also for, opportunity parity for women. And so, and the way I would describe this is that we have an aspiration as a company to be as diverse as the patients and the communities that we serve, right? And we serve the world. And so an area of focus for me that's very near and dear to me is collaborating with HR to develop an inclusive leadership training program. So that's something that, especially, the experience over the last year, having those conversations and making sure that we're being inclusive is really important. We have, we've provided training and also, from all of us on the leadership team, we, in a very forthright and direct way, we actually cover topics such as racism, conscious and unconscious bias, and bystander responsibility. So we call them, these are maybe not the most comfortable conversations, but they're conversations. Exactly. These are courageous conversations, absolutely. And so, we definitely have, specific goals that we have as a company, and we, I'll give you an example of those. We said that by 2025, we aim to achieve parity at the vice president and above level for U.S. minorities by increasing our minority representation from 19% to 32%. That's a concrete goal, right? And all of us are working on that one, right? So that's really increasing the representation of African Americans and Blacks and Hispanics and Latinos, right? As an example. And these are the kind of, commitments that we make, not only to ourselves inside the company, but we've also shared those externally. The other thing, we definitely invest in specific development programs, because it's not enough to attract, the different diverse groups. It's also, you got to invest in them so that they can be successful over time. And that's another thing that's important for us as well, is also make sure that you have the environment and the continuous support, coaching, and training, so that not only can we attract, but we can also retain and grow and develop that talent as well.
Wonderful. So what is your favorite thing, in a nutshell? Your favorite thing about your job and working at Pfizer?
That's easy. My favorite thing about Pfizer is our purpose. I'm motivated that every day I come to work, and everything that we do is to drive breakthroughs that change patients' lives, right? I'll tell you, my mother always said to us when we were young, find jobs where you cannot tell the difference between working and playing. Because of our purpose, I feel that my job is a mission that I'm very connected to.
Great advice from your mother. I love that. I'm going to take some questions from the audience. Someone asked, and I get this question a lot when I do talks like this, is how do you, if in this virtual working world, how do you balance the guilt of taking time to take walks and step away with the guilt of, oh, I should be working, and especially with what you're doing, like I should be working because the world needs a vaccine, right? How do you go take a walk and not feel guilty about it?
First of all, because, and I think it's always, it comes back to that question of balance, right? So to me, you know how when you take a flight, they always tell you if something happens, take care of yourself first before you help others.
Right. Mask.
I think about that, and that's, you will be your best self if you take care of yourself. So there should be no guilt whatsoever, because, the better you are mentally, physically, emotionally, the better you're going to be at your job, and the more you're going to be able to contribute. So that's one thought. And I would say the other thought, and I certainly, before the virtual work from home, big giant pilot that we're all on, I used to travel every week. And I was thinking that's another way to, for those of us that are more mathematically inclined, think about the time that you're not spending commuting, which is significant, right? Especially if you live in some of the, kind of larger urban areas. And so the way I see it, that time that I don't spend time commuting, I can balance some of that time for myself, and some of it, I invest in my job.
But so that's a discipline. That is a discipline, because the research shows that a lot of people have redirected that time to work only.
Only, that's the issue. It shouldn't be only.
Right. Couple other questions we've gotten are really important, I think, especially when I think about our Fairy God Boss community, which is, if we don't have a technology background, or we don't have a background in data and analytics, how can we become more fluent? How can we transition or evolve our career, especially as the demand for that skill set really increases?
So a couple of things. I think, and I can speak for my organization, and so I'll give two kind of pointers there. My division, while we are the digital division, as you heard, we also have business process excellence and learning and development. But we also have a couple of other roles. We have a customer experience team who thinks about the experience of the customer, right? Who thinks about what do those journeys need to look like, and how do we best help them? We have digital marketing in our mix. We have product managers that think about what do our different products need to have in terms of capabilities, functionality. So the first point is, just because an organization is called digital, we don't only have digital, coding kind of jobs, right? We also need the people that think about the experience and think about, the ergonomics and think about, how do we ensure that we're meeting the needs? And we definitely have a variety of those kind of roles. And I will tell you that they're just as important as the more technical roles. That's one pointer, is don't think that just because an organization is digital, that we don't offer other roles that are not necessarily technical. I think the second thing is, I always believe, and, I think all of us have heard this, practice makes perfect.
Yeah.
Keep practice, right? Practice, the different, more and more of our lives have digital, I would even say intertwined. The way we do our banking, the way we do our shopping, right? If you're like me, I do a lot of my shopping online. And every time you go through that experience, think that you're actually being digital, right? So take those opportunities. And then there's a lot of different courses available to get a better understanding, of what some of these digital capabilities are. I would also, definitely take opportunities to learn that way too.
I love that. And so like we're all a little more digital than we think we are, right? We have a few very specific questions about what courses do you recommend? How exactly do you recommend becoming more fluent in digital? Are there specific courses or places you recommend?
There's different, look, Coursera, clearly has some offerings. LinkedIn, has some offerings. I know that, there. And, what's interesting more and more is that I think the way that, and I know from my learning and development experience how we're approaching this, I also find that training and courses these days are more snackable, right? We're in the YouTube generation. And so, a lot of these will have, materials that you read, but then I find the ones that also provide, those kind of video tutorials and, but definitely, there's a number of different, different providers of courses out there. I mentioned a couple, but, there's quite a bit that's available where I've seen targeted, particularly having a good, set of courses on digital.
Yeah. And I like this idea that maybe you don't have to like code in Java from day one. Maybe you start with some sort of user experience or data analytics. That's a little bit more of a step. So the other question we've got, and we get this a lot from our audience as well, is there's a lot of women who've either been impacted by COVID or who've left the workforce for some time to be caregivers. Well, how do you recommend they approach reentry?
So I think, and that's definitely been, one of the impacts of the pandemic, right, is that, like I said, life, COVID happens to all of us. And, depending on the circumstances and what, we're juggling, right? My recommendation, I think I do anticipate that as, and you're starting to see some of it, right? As people are being vaccinated, things are opening up more. I do think that I anticipate that there will be opportunities. And in fact, I'm seeing already some of that. And, to prepare, I would say some of those online kind of courses, or just, if you're in between, let's say, right, I would also think about what is it that you liked about what you were doing before the pandemic? And then I would also do something courageous, which is, okay, that's what I liked, but are there other areas that I've always been interested in that this would be a good time to then go back, to explore and pursue? Definitely, update, of course, make sure you have a strong, a good resume, because that's one of the first things that people are going to look at. But I would really use the opportunity to think about what is the nature and the kind of a role, and even the kind of a company that you think this will be really fulfilling. And again, I bring it back to, when you ask me what do I like most about what I do, and that's, I like what I do because it really is fulfilling to know that this aligns very well to my passion, which is how do we harness technology, digital and data to improve healthcare and, make it more transparent, more efficient, to make it better. So use that time to think about what is your interest, and as much as you can think about that in the purpose, and that's going to be really helpful to then, figure out, okay, what kind of companies and what kind of roles, does it make sense to then pursue?
Yes, great. And I think another interesting point that was sort of implicit in what you said is, don't be afraid to hear no. Go into it thinking, you try for a lot of different jobs and expect to mostly hear no, and then you'll get a few yeses. And then the other thing I would say is that, I don't know if anybody saw this, but LinkedIn actually just added a function where you can indicate that you've been a stay-at-home mom. And so it's like, we're not trying to sweep it under the rug. We're not, it was like, this is what you did from here to here, and that's why you were not employed outside the home and so forth, right? So we don't need to make excuses for it, right? Here's one more question from the audience. So were you always promoted or requested to fill a new role, or do you have an example of when you raised your hand or took on a stretch assignment that helped you get the next opportunity?
That is a great question, and I'm glad that you asked it. And it's interesting because my husband and I were just talking about this. We were just talking about this. And, he mentioned something, and it's interesting, right? It's interesting how someone else can give you a perspective that maybe you yourself, because you're in the moment, maybe don't, I wasn't as conscious of it. But he mentioned that that throughout my career, remember, he's known me for 25 years. I would get these assignments that some of them you could even say they're mission impossible. And, initially when I first took the first one, it was back in 1999. I know that's a long time ago. And I remember, thinking, and I remember the visual in my mind. I got this assignment, or at least I was asked to take on this assignment. And I remember thinking that it was like a tightrope, and that assignment meant that I would need to walk on a tightrope, and that there was a high likelihood that I could walk across or that I could fall. And I also remember thinking, well, I'm in my 20s. I'm going to learn from it, and I'm going to go all in. And so I think that it's a combination. I think when there's two ways to do it. One is, you'll have mentors and managers who actually see that your potential, and because of their experience, especially if you're early on in your career, that they can see what you're capable of even more than you can. So that's one scenario, and they will give you opportunities of some of these, kind of assignments that are stretch. And I would say take them every time, learn everything that you can, because every time you do one of those, you're going to learn, and, you're going to be better every time. In that particular instance, I always, one of the things I'm proud of, if I look at the different companies where I've been, I always feel that Pfizer, this is my latest assignment, right? Pfizer has a better chief technology officer than my previous company did. And my previous company had a better, CIO than the previous company. So you're always improving, but you improve by taking on those challenging assignments. So when they offer them to you, take them, go all in, do your best. The second part, though, is I also raise my hand. So I'll give you an example, a really good example. In fact, it was at Pfizer. When I first joined Pfizer, That first 6 months, I went around and I went to our different plants. I went to our different, country offices, in the U.S., in Europe, and in Asia. And I went. The first 6 months was me getting to know everybody and listening to them, because I always want to hear what are the pain points, what are the things that they would like to see, what has worked. So it's a little bit of a tour where I'm getting to hear what everybody thinks. And then I remember coming back, and it was coming back from Asia, and it was in June sometime of 2019. And I remember coming back and telling Albert, my boss, I said, hey, I noticed everybody complaining about this medical and legal review process. I said, I thought about it, and I think I have an idea about how we can improve it, And he said to me, Lidia, I've been here for 25 years. If you can fix that, he said, everybody will love you. And so I went, but so fast forward, right? So I first had to align, my several other leaders, because it's a very complex, multidisciplinary process, right? And so I had to first get several of my colleagues to agree with my idea of how we can tackle this thing differently. And I remember, sitting with them, and I could see in their face, well, we've tried this before, Lidia, and we haven't been able to. But they came with me, I'm new, so they figured, all right, we'll go along with you. So I'm happy to say that because of that idea, and because of galvanizing people and daring to do something very different, even if it's a process that for 25 years has been a pain, we actually, with a cross-functional team, were able to reduce the time it takes to approve content by 83%.
Wow.
And our commercial people all over the world are so appreciative and so ecstatic, and they feel like we solved something that has been a pain. So back to your question, certainly take assignments when they're offered and give it your best. But also, if you have an idea, raise your hand and propose it, and you'll be amazed how, good leaders, they will give you the runway to go and do something about it.
Right, you can sort of fulfill your own destiny. All right, Lidia, I wanted you to hear one of the comments that came in because it's so lovely. And Shelby says, I really appreciate Lidia's explanation of focus time. It wasn't until after I signed up for this discussion that I realized that one of my family members works at Pfizer in Lidia's organization. And I wanted to share that I personally feel her intentions and leadership style have positively impacted my family members, and how indirectly our family balances and respects work-life balance. So your support of work-life balance from the top is impacting this family. And I know how important that must feel and be. Last thing before we close, what is your advice for anyone looking to pursue a career at Pfizer?
My advice, a couple of things, that I would say, and this is like, because I always try to be, kind of give you nuggets and actionable things, right? The most important thing for any of us, and I count myself in that as well, right, is look for mentors, people who inspire you, whose work you find interesting, and ask them questions about what they do and get their guidance. That over the years, I have had mentors from my English, middle school teacher to, some of my, my managers, right, my supervisors, to others completely outside of my work kind of circle, right? I would say do your research on Pfizer, leverage your networks, right? Reach out to people to find out more about your areas of interest. That I think this is a great example of a powerful network here with Ferry Godboss, right? Find others who are at Pfizer and talk to them about their experience. That's definitely important. Another thing that I always recommend, especially for us women, is the importance of building our personal brand.
Yeah.
Right? Be clear about what you stand for and be thoughtful about how you show up. I think that's an important one. If as a leader, if you're in a leadership role, bring strategy and a point of view, when you network and discuss your ambitions. And I always find that don't quiet your voice. If you have ideas, if you have a point of view, take the time to organize it, but, bring that point of view. That's important. Build on your passion and experience, and think about how you can turn that into a career at Pfizer. So if you look at at Pfizer.com career section, you can see what types of positions are available, because we have positions, you can imagine, across, so many different areas, from science to clinical development to digital to commercial and everything in between. And I also encourage you to check out, Pfizer. It's a great place to work, and it is on the cutting edge of healthcare and certainly digital, but, we do other things as well, of course.
You changed the world in the best possible way. So you did. Well, thank you, Lidia. Thank you so much it's been wonderful hearing about your journey and your career. And it sounds like, especially working in your organization, is a wonderful place to work. So thank you for spending time. I'm so sorry about our technical issues at the beginning. I really want to thank all of you for staying with us, and we'll look forward to talking to you all again soon. Thank you.